Roll Credits, where movie lovers get the trivia they didn't know they needed. This podcast was created with help from AI tools, so double-check any quotes before you drop trivia at your next movie night. Today, we're setting sail with Disney's live-action Moana, a new take on one of the studio's most beloved modern adventures.
Oh man, setting sail is right.
Literally. But seriously, imagine you're trying to take your high school math final, right? But you're strapped to a wooden canoe suspended in this massive 10-foot deep water tank, and there are actual Navy SEALs swimming in the dark water right below you.
That is just wild to think about.
Right, but that was literally just a typical Tuesday for the teenage lead of this 2026 live-action adaptation of Moana. So for this deep dive, we're really digging into the sources we have, which is this amazing treasure trove of behind-the-scenes interviews, production logs, insights from the Oceanic Cultural Trust, and of course, the wildly divided critical reviews.
Yeah, and the mission for us today, and for you listening, is to really cut through all that hype, and the backlash too, honestly, to figure out exactly how and why they took this incredibly vibrant animated world and practically wrestled it into live-action reality.
Wrestling is the right word,
Yeah.
because we all know the premise.
Yeah.
It's that classic story. Moana leaves Motunui, defies her dad, finds the demigod Maui, and they cross the ocean to restore the heart of Te Fiti.
Right, to stop that creeping ecological disaster.
It's a perfect story. But here is the elephant in the room that I think we have to address right at the start. The original animated film came out, barely 10 years ago?
Yeah, 2016.
And it is currently the most watched movie in Disney Plus history.
Yeah.
So, going to our sources, the huge question is, why now? Why remake a movie that is still dominating?
It's the big question, yeah. And the sources show this really fascinating split in how it's justified depending on who you ask.
What do you mean, business versus creative?
Exactly. So from the business side, you have executives like Andrew Cripps, and he basically just points to the IP. I mean, the global fan base is just so massive, so the financial logic of putting this back in theaters is undeniable to them.
Sure, yeah. Money talks.
Right. But then you look at the creative side, and director Thomas Kail offers this completely different, almost poetic justification.
Oh, right, because he comes from theater.
Yeah, he has a huge theater background, and he actually described both stage acting and animation as these kind of ephemeral mediums. He compared them to writing messages and melting sand.
Wow, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, and he said his goal with this live-action version was an opportunity to, quote, etch in stone a celebration of Polynesian culture. He wanted to anchor it with real human faces, real gravity, real environments.
Etched in stone. I like that. But, looking at the review roundup, that shift to reality hasn't totally convinced everybody.
Not at all. No.
The critics are super divided. You read the Disinsider, and they are praising it as this classic reborn. They love the tactile representation of the culture.
Totally.
But then you have someone like Peter Travers over at the Travers Take, who is way more skeptical. He gave it 2 out of 4 stars.
Ouch. Yeah, he called it a cash grab, didn't he?
Yeah, straight up cash grab. He basically argued that forcing this magical animated story into live action actually limits the imagination of the world. And, we have to stay impartial here, but both of those perspectives are totally valid ways of looking at it.
Definitely. It just comes down to whether you think live action inherently adds value to a story we already know.
Right, which kind of brings up this pushback I had while reading the notes. Is adapting a 10-year-old movie just is it like a band doing a shot-for-shot cover of a hit song? Is there actually room for a genuinely new interpretation?
Well, let's run with that cover band analogy for a second. If they're playing the exact same notes, the newness, the fresh take, has to come from the instruments they're using.
Okay, I'm with you.
And in this case, those new instruments are the practical, tactile realities of the production. I mean, they didn't just throw up a bunch of green screens.
Yeah. Right, they actually built it.
They built massive practical sets in Oahu, specifically at Pokai Bay, and then they did some supplement work at Trilith Studios in Atlanta.
The details on that village construction are insane.
Oh, it's my favorite part of the deep dive.
Because, to build Motunui, the traditional houses, the fail, the canoes, they didn't use a single modern hammer or nail.
Nothing. Zero.
I honestly thought that was just a PR talking point at first, but no. They braced the entire village together using thousands of yards of coconut fiber lashing.
Thousands of yards. And they brought in a master lasher, Sopolamalama Felipe Tohi, all the way from Tonga to guide the whole thing.
Which is incredible.
It is, because that decision changes the physical reality of the film.
Yeah.
Coconut fiber lashing isn't just to look pretty for the camera. It's a real architectural technique that lets these structures flex with the wind instead of just snapping.
So when the actors are leaning on a post or sitting in a canoe, it actually behaves like the real thing.
Exactly. It forces the environment to be authentic. And that extends right into the wardrobe, too.
Yes. Costume designer Liz McGregor.
She did phenomenal work.
She did. She was born in Tonga, based in New Zealand, and she actually called this her Polynesian Disney princess moment.
I love that.
Right. And she and her team, they hand-sourced every natural fiber. They make sure that every stitch, every stone, every single shell had a historical context and told a story.
Well, and it all feeds into Thomas Kail's master plan for the movie.
Which was the grounding, right?
Yeah, his overarching strategy. He was adamant that the first 35 minutes of this film had to be aggressively grounded in reality. Real dirt, real sand rubbing against skin, real sweat.
So that later on.
Exactly. So that when the narrative brings in the magic, like the neon monster realm of Lalatai or the giant lava demon Te-Ka, the audience is already emotionally anchored. The magic doesn't feel weightless because you've spent half an hour in a world that obeys the laws of physics.
Okay, but here's my pushback on that. Grounding a village on land is one thing, right? But the whole story is about the ocean. And the ocean is a living character. How do you maintain that physical, tactile reality when you're dealing with a magical body of water?
By actually putting your actors on real water.
Which sounds terrifying.
It was. They didn't just rely on gimbals and blue screens. When Catherine Lagaya is singing How Far I'll Go, they literally took the canoe a full mile offshore in Hawaii.
A mile offshore, just out in the open ocean.
Yeah. But obviously for the dangerous storm sequences, they couldn't risk massive open ocean swells. So they used this massive 10-foot deep tank.
And this is where the Navy SEALs come in.
Yes.
Yeah.
To keep it realistic but safe, they had actual active-duty Navy SEALs in the water underneath the boat during the takes, just in case anything went wrong.
That is just wild, but water ruins everything, right? Like as a production challenge.
Oh, it's a nightmare for the props department. Property master Matthew Cavaliero had to make sure everything could survive the water.
Right, because wood warps, paint chips.
Exactly. Take the heart of Tefiti. It's a small stone, but they had to make 150 different versions of it.
Wait, 150?
Yeah, they had hollow resin ones with LED lights inside for the glowing shots. And then they poured soft rubber versions that looked identical so the actors wouldn't break a rib falling on them during stunts.
Oh, that makes total sense. And Maui's Freyuk too, right?
Oh, that was a whole other engineering feat. They made over 20 versions of that hook. They had lightweight foam ones so stunt guys wouldn't tear a shoulder swinging it.
Oh.
But they also had a structurally reinforced one with a steel core, just so Dwayne Johnson could lean his full body weight on it without it snapping.
Because he's a huge guy.
Massive. They even had to redesign Moana's canoe blade. The real wooden one was just too heavy for a teenager to paddle through water take after take, so they made a hollow fiberglass replica to cut the drag.
That's fascinating. But okay, let's talk about the ocean as a character. Because in the animated version, it's super stylized, right? It literally high-fives Moana. It spits water at her.
Right, it's very cute.
It's charming. But if you try to do that in live action with photorealistic water, doesn't it run a huge risk of looking like, I don't know, like a terrifying water tentacle grabbing a kid?
The uncanny valley of water.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How do they pull that off practically?
So that fell on VFX supervisor Bill Westenhofer. And to avoid that creepy sci-fi tentacle vibe, he balanced the real water physics with the spirit of the character. Kail actually compared the ocean to the horse in the movie The Black Stallion.
Oh, interesting. Like an animal that is wild but curious.
Exactly. So they programmed the fluid dynamics so the water didn't just move like a magic spell. They messed with the gravity vectors in the CGI so the water's movements looked like breathing or hesitation. It held its shape just long enough to feel like an entity, but the edges were always breaking and splashing like real fluid.
So it still felt wet.
It felt wet, it felt real, but it could still emote.
Wow. And, you know, a sentient ocean only works if the actors are selling it, so we have to talk about the cast.
We have to. Catherine Lagoaya.
She is a 17-year-old Australian newcomer, Samoan descent. And like I mentioned at the very beginning, the production had to accommodate her high school schedule. She was literally taking her final exams remotely from set.
From her trailer, covered in tank water.
Yes, it's so funny. But the critics, even the ones who hated the concept of the remake, they all universally praised her performance.
They really did. She managed to capture both the gravitas and wisdom of a tribal leader, but also the total attitude of a teenager who is in way over her head.
Right. And then, standing right next to her, we have Dwayne Johnson returning as Maui.
The demigod himself.
And there was a ton of internet controversy when his design first dropped. Because they tried to match those exaggerated animated proportions, he had to act while wearing this 40-pound muscle suit, plus prosthetics, plus this massive wig.
The wig got so much backlash.
It did. People were so confused by the volume of it.
But Kale actually defended that design. He pointed out that Maui is a wayfinder. Conceptually, he is almost always on the back of a canoe, facing heavy ocean winds.
Oh, so the wig had to have lift.
Exactly. It needed physical lift to catch the wind on set and match that animated windswept look. But the catch is, because they were filming on real water, that wig absorbed so much moisture that it added an extra 7 pounds of dead weight to his head.
Okay, that sounds like torture. Trying to sing, hit your marks, do choreo, and emote while wearing 47 extra pounds of wet hair and fake muscles. It sounds like doing Shakespeare inside a wet mattress. How did he even act through that?
It completely changes how you have to perform. Johnson talked about how he couldn't rely on subtle facial microexpressions because they'd get lost under the prosthetics, so he had to over-articulate his posture and his physical comedy.
That makes sense.
Yeah, the creative team said he really tapped into his natural Samoan mana. He leaned heavily into the kinetic vocabulary of Polynesian performance.
What does that mean exactly?
It means using broad, intentional, full-body movements to communicate emotion. That way, his performance pushes right through the physical restrictions of the suit.
And that kinetic vocabulary, the movement, the dance, the music, I mean, that is the heartbeat of a Disney musical anyway.
Exactly. It's where the culture actually lives on screen.
And speaking of the screen, the sources point out that Kale really didn't just do a shot-for-shot remake.
Not at all. There are over 2,200 shots in this film, and they made some really smart story tweaks to fit the live-action medium.
Like the argument scene?
Yes.
I love this change. So in the animation, Moana and her father argue about the ocean just kind of alone on the beach. But Kale moved that argument directly into the center of the village.
Which is brilliant.
It is, because now the whole community is watching. It turns a private family squabble into a massive societal debate about the survival of their people.
And they also changed the entrance to Lalotai, the monster realm. Instead of just jumping down a sheer cliff, the characters physically have to hack their way through this dense, terrifying jungle.
Which, again, plays into that physical grounding we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
And that physical grounding even applied to the choreography.
Right, with Tiana Nonasina-Lufa.
Yeah, the choreographer. She didn't just make up standard Broadway jazz hands for the song Where You Are.
Far from it.
The sources say she built the dances directly from practical daily village tasks. So the moves for the dance are literally the muscle memory of weaving baskets, pulling heavy fishing nets, and the specific respectful postures you use when serving elders.
The culture is literally baked into the physical labor of the dance.
Exactly. And to make sure all of that was accurate,
Yeah.
they brought in Dr. Grant Mugututia as a cultural consultant, mostly for language authenticity.
Oh, this is such a great piece of trivia. They actually added brand new scenes that weren't in the original. Like, there's a moment where Maui gets blasted by Te Kā, right?
Yeah, massive hit.
And in his dazed reaction, he actually starts speaking in Samoan and other Pacific languages. It grounds him in a real linguistic history rather than just treating him like a fantasy character.
That is so cool, and it's a great example of blending the old with the new, which obviously we have to talk about the music.
We can't do a Moana deep dive without the music.
Right, so they kept the classic Lin-Manuel Miranda, Opataya Foy, and Mark Mancina songs, but they needed something new. So Lin-Manuel Miranda actually wrote a brand new original song for the end credits.
Called Along the Way.
Yes,
Yeah.
and the concept is so meta. It's the duet where Ali Carvalho, who was the original animated Moana and is an executive producer on this one, she sings directly alongside the new live-action Moana, Catherine Lagoya.
And then Dwayne Johnson eventually jumps in too.
Yeah, it's this literal passing of the baton from the animated generation to the live-action one. Oh, and here's a fun fact I found in the notes. When Lin-Manuel Miranda was recording the demo to pitch the song, he actually brought in his old Hamilton castmates, the Schuyler sisters, Philippa Sue and Jasmine Cephas Jones, to sing the vocal tracks.
That is amazing. That creative circle is just so tight. But, analyzing that song and really this whole production, it kind of leaves you with a much broader question about storytelling.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. Like, if Disney is explicitly passing the baton from animation to live action, what does that actually mean for the legacy of the original?
Right. And I think this is a fascinating thought experiment for you, listening to ponder as these remakes just keep dominating the box office. Historically, how do we define folklore?
Stories passed down by word of mouth. Right.
Exactly. Oral traditions that shift and change slightly with every new storyteller, every new generation. So when Disney takes a 10-year-old movie, rebuilds it with real wood, casts real humans, and battles real ocean physics, aren't they basically treating their own catalog like modern folklore?
Oh, wow. I see what you mean.
Yeah, they're refusing to let their mythology just sit in the past. They are taking the exact same myth and retelling it to a new generation, but using a completely different medium.
Yeah.
They're swapping out ink and pixels for flesh, blood, and gravity just to see how the weight of reality alters the story. The medium changes, but the core myth survives the translation.
That is a wild way to look at it, but it makes so much sense. And that wraps our voyage through Disney's live-action Moana. If you enjoyed this episode, follow Roll Credits and share it with your fellow movie fans. And let us know what film we should cover next, old or new. We'll be back soon with more trivia, more movie magic, and remember, the ocean is always calling.